Dear elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum. First of all, I would like to convey to all of you my congratulations upon the birth anniversary of Imam Mahdi, the last and long-awaited savior of mankind. Imam Sadiq actually said, "One of you who dies awaiting Imam Mahdi dies as if he was with him in his tent." Therefore, we pray that Allah counts us as Imam Mahdi's awaiters now and his helpers during his long-awaited unveiling. Now I would like to introduce to all of you our very dear guest speaker, Dr. Mehdi Hazari, who has traveled all the way from North Carolina to spend his evening with us. Dr. Hazari is a brilliant scientist, and he received the 2011 Early Career Award for Scientists and Engineers from President Obama himself. The award is the highest honor bestowed by the U.S. government on outstanding science and engineering professionals in the early stages of their research careers. Dr. Hazari is, as you can see, truly a role model for all of us, as despite having a very successful career as a scientist, he has dedicated his life to spread the message of the Ahlul Bayt as well. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all his efforts and bless him with even more knowledge and tawfiq to continue serving our religion. Brothers and sisters, let's welcome Dr. Mehdi Hazari for the first time at Shiane Haidery with our 3 loudest salawat.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
بتعجيل فرج الإمام صاحب العصر والزمان صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
فاتحة. وقل ربي أعوذ بك من همزات الشياطين وأعوذ بك ربي أن يحضرون. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي أنزل القرآن الكريم والفرقان الحكيم على النبي الحليم الذي هو على خلق عظيم وجعله الدليل على خير سبيل وكتابا فيه تفصيل وبيان وتحصيل ظاهره أنيق وباطنه عميق لا تحصى عجائبه ولا تبلى غرائبه. والصلاة والسلام على من أرسل حجة للعالمين وكان نبيا وآدم بين الماء والطين سيدنا ونبينا وشفيعنا وحبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا المصطفى الأمجد والرسول المسدد أبي القاسم محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المنتجبين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين الحجة بن الحسن روحي وأرواح العالمين له الفداء واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين من يوم عداوتهم إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في محكم كتابه المبين: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ثم أورثنا الكتاب الذين اصطفينا من عبادنا فمنهم ظالم لنفسه ومنهم مقتصد ومنهم سابق بالخيرات بإذن الله ذلك هو الفضل الكبير. آمنا بالله. صدق الله العلي العظيم. السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. Brothers and sisters, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me. It is my distinct honor and privilege to be here with people so dedicated and so sincere. And Brother Jawad and Brother Shiane and Brother Hassanain, all of them have been so kind to me and my family since we've arrived. And inshallah, may Allah bless you for all your efforts, and particularly this this introduction, the award by President Obama, my father to this day, he still tells me that there was probably a typographical error somewhere. So somebody who really deserved it didn't get it, and my name got slipped in there somehow by mistake. I think certainly maybe that's the case. If you know me for real, you'll say, yes, that's the case for this guy. But alhamdulillah rabbil alameen.
For the health and life of the Blanca Salwa.
They say after one of the battles that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam had fought, he had defeated the enemy. It was in the early days of Islam. The enemy had been defeated, and when the enemy was defeated, some of the enemy soldiers had been captured and taken as what you would call today prisoner of war. So they had been gathered, their hands were not tied, they were treated nicely and respectfully, and they were made to sit in one place. Someone was watching, but they were taken. It was part of the battlefield. So when you defeated your enemy, and if some of the enemy soldiers were captured, they were kept as prisoners, and they were then used for bartering or some exchange or something like this. So now it is described that these enemy soldiers, they are sitting, the Kuffar of Quraysh are sitting together, and they are very worried. They are talking to each other, one is saying to the other, I don't know if you've heard, but we have heard things about this man Muhammad, that he is very cruel. He takes pleasure in torturing his prisoners, and we should be very afraid of what is going to happen to us next. Meanwhile, as they are talking, they are worried, they are agitated a little bit, fearing. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is walking by, and he has a smile on his face. So the one who was making this comment amongst the soldiers who was captured, he says, look at him, he is smiling. He is taking pleasure in how he's going to torture us and harm us now that we are his prisoner. We know better what is Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Rasulullah hears this. He hears the discussion of the prisoners who have been captured from the enemy. He goes over to them. He says, I am not smiling because I am going to relish torturing you. I will never torture you. I will fulfill your rights even though you are my enemies on the battlefield. He says, I am smiling because what I have brought to you is the message of truth. And it is what is good for you, and it is your salvation, yet you do not want to accept it. I am smiling because of the irony that I see in your eyes. Brothers and sisters, this is the message of Islam. That what has come to us is the immense good. It is the immense good. And it is to teach us, first and foremost, how we should act with respect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we cannot understand how we act with respect to Allah, then nothing else is going to mean anything. The greatest relationship is the relationship of a person with Allah, with his Creator. And believe me, that relationship on a day like the 15th of Sha'aban is even more meaningful. And inshallah, I will explain why that is. They say, even about Nabi Allah, Rasulullah, Isa alayhi salatu wassalam, alayhi wa ala nabiyyina wa alayhi salam, that when Isa alayhi salam was born, he came into and you will excuse me, those in my community know I tell lots of stories. So if you don't like stories, you can raise your hand now and I will stop. But I usually tell a lot of stories, hopefully the children will know. And it is the best way to learn because the Holy Quran is immersed and filled with stories. So they say that when Isa alayhi salam was born, we know the story that he is a newborn in his mother's arms. He comes out, and the mother is carrying the newborn Isa alayhi salam, Sayyidah Maryam alayhi salam, she's carrying him. So the people of the community, they come to Maryam, Sayyidah Maryam, and they say, Ya bint Imran, how is it that you have a baby? You're not married, you have no husband, you come from a religious, chaste, honorable family. How is it that this has happened? Question. Now you know from Surah Maryam and the Quran that it describes the story of Maryam alayhi salam, the story of Zakaria, the story of Hannah, and the story of Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, that Sayyidah Maryam doesn't speak. Instead she indicates to her newborn son Isa alayhi salam who she is holding. And Isa alayhi salam speaks. And we know the story is in the Quran. I am not telling you anything. What I am calling your attention to is that when the community asks that how is this possible that Ya Maryam, you have a baby, you don't have a husband, how is that possible? The Quran will tell you the words of Isa alayhi salam, and those words are amazing, incredible. He says, قال إني عبد الله أتاني الكتاب وجعلني نبيا. Isa alayhi salam's first answer is that I am the servant of God. Notice he doesn't say Inni Rasulullah or Inni Nabiyullah. He says, Qala Inni Abdullah. I am the servant of God. Immediately he establishes that relationship that exists with the creation and the create. Inni Abdullah. I am the servant of God. Atani al-kitab wa ja'alani nabiyya. He gave me the book and then he made me into a nabi. But first I am the servant of God. Brothers and sisters, we all want to be the servant of God, is it not? We all say, I am the servant of God, I am the servant of God. However, have we ever asked ourselves the question, does Allah want to take us as a servant? If I have a servant working in my house, 10 o'clock in the morning, I come down to the kitchen, he is still sleeping. He comes at 11 o'clock into the kitchen, he says to me, what's for breakfast? And I'm trying to be generous. I say, okay, well, I have some leftover, eat some of mine. He will sit, he will read the newspaper, drink some qahwa, some coffee. And after one, I will say, look, there are some chores that need to be done, please do them. He'll say, okay, but let me finish reading the newspaper. Will I keep such a servant in the house? Will anybody keep such a servant? No. He should be paying me to be living in the hotel, right? Same questions we should ask, that will Allah take us as a servant? We say that we are servants of God, but are we truly the dedicated servants that we need to be? And for this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has been very merciful on us, because He has given us everything we need so we can start being the right servant. He has given you the Quran, isn't it? You want to know how to act with respect to Allah, go to the Quran. But the majesty of Allah's message is that not only did He give you this book, but He gave you a physical example, a practical example in Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. So the best of example is in Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, the Ahl al-Bayt alayhi salatu wa salam, or Imam al-Athhar alayhi salam. These are the practical examples of the Quran. And Allah has chosen them. And believe me, the reason we have the imamate, the reason we have imams, is so that you know how to talk to Allah, how to cultivate that relationship with Allah. I ask you again this question, and you will be tired of me by tonight, and you will probably never call me that this speaker, he always is asking too many questions. He doesn't tell us anything, he just asks too many questions. I ask the question that, do you worship like the birds? Do you worship like animals, or like the wind, or like the trees, or like the angels? There are angels who spend their entire creation in sajda, in ruku'. Are we like them? We do not worship like them. We worship in a very unique manner that is suitable for human beings. For that, you have an imam who will show you how to do that. You have a chosen by Allah, who is a perfect example of the Quran, who will show you how to worship, how it is you are supposed to behave with respect to your Creator. Just take our du'as, brothers and sisters. Ramadan is coming. One of the du'a you read in Ramadan is du'a Abu Hamza al-Thumani, the great companion of Imam Ali Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salatu wassalam. You want to know how to cultivate that relationship with Allah? You want to know? Read the du'as of the Prophet. He will show you. They will show you how to speak to Allah, how to talk to Allah, how to ask Allah for an answer, how to request something from Allah, and what to feel in your heart towards Allah. Imam Ali Zayn al-Abidin in Dua Abu Hamza al-Thumani, he says, أَفَتُرَاكَ يَا رَبِّ تُخْلِفُ ذُنُونَنَا أَوْ تُخَيِّبُ آمَالَنَا كَلَّا يَا كَرِيمُ لَيْسَ هَذَا ظَنُّنَا بِكَ. O Allah, is it such that you will disappoint us? Ya Allah, is it such that you are going to disappoint us? Or our aspirations of you, Ya Allah, our feelings and our hope towards you, you will smash them? You will render them useless? لَيْسَ هَذَا ظَنُّنَا بِكَ وَلَا هَذَا فِيكَ طَمَعُنَا. No, Allah, this is not what we think about you. This is not our feeling towards you. We don't feel this, that you will destroy our aspirations. You will smash our hopes. No. He says, إِنَّ لَنَا فِيكَ أَمَلًا طَوِيلًا كَثِيرًا إِنَّ لَنَا فِيكَ رَجَاءً عَظِيمًا. Oh Allah, our hopes in you are extended and far. Our aspiration in you is azim, it's great. Ya Allah, this is the way you speak to Allah. This is the feeling you cultivate, that a true abd of Allah, the servant, when he wants something, he goes to the master. He has no place to go other than to the master. And that is the Imam is pointing you how to do it in dua of Hamza Fuman. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has, and there are example upon example, dua al-Kumay, dua Joshan al-Saghir, brothers and sisters, dua Joshan al-Saghir, in the moments of difficulty and trial, read dua Joshan al-Saghir from Imam Bab al-Hawa'id, Musa ibn Ja'far al-Kadhim alayhi as-salam. It will give you that special connection to your Allah that in that moment will solve every pain, every sorrow, every difficulty that you have in your heart. That Imam, these Imams of ours, they will show us how to cultivate that. So Allah has chosen people for this. He has given you the book, and He has chosen a practical example, a living human example that is with you. And the ayah of the Holy Quran I recited for you, it says very clearly that ثُمَّ أَوْرَثْنَا الْكِتَابَ الَّذِينَ اصْطَفَيْنَا مِنْ عِبَادِنَا. We have made inheritors of the book, those who we have chosen. People we have chosen, we have made them the inheritors of the book. And the word is used istafayna, and the word is istafa. The word istafa is the same word that comes from Muhammad al-Mustafa. Right? Istafa means chosen. In Arabic, basic Arabic, it means, you translate simply, it means something that is chosen or someone who is chosen. So it says, ثُمَّ أَوْرَثْنَا الْكِتَابَ الَّذِينَ اصْطَفَيْنَا مِنْ عِبَادِنَا. We have made inheritors of the book, those who are chosen by us. فَمِنْهُمْ ظَالِمٌ لِنَفْسِهِ وَمِنْهُمْ مُقْتَصِدٌ وَمِنْهُمْ سَابِقٌ بِالْخَيْرَاتِ بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ ذَلِكَ هُوَ الْفَضْلُ الْكَبِيرُ. There are three groups of people who exist in the earth: those who do dhulm on themselves, who sin against themselves and harm themselves and do injustice on themselves. Those who are struggling in the middle, like us, who want piety, want goodness, but struggle, commit sins, but immediately come back to Allah. And then those who are sabiqun bil khairat, those who are foremost in doing good deeds. Bi-idhnillah, by the permission of Allah. There are some. So the beauty of the Quran is that the Arabic has very, very significant meaning for us. The Arabic has very deep meaning. So in Arabic, there's two simple ways of saying that something is chosen. One is to say istafa, like that ayah says. Or you say Muhammad al-Mustafa, chosen one, istafa. But there's another way you say ikhtiyar. Ikhtiyar also means I chose something, or I'm choosing something, or something is chosen. Now what is the difference between these two? Why has Allah said istafa? Why has He called him Muhammad al-Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam? Why has He done this? So the ulama, they explain to us that the meanings of these two words, ikhtiyar, to choose, and istifa, to choose, are different, slightly different. They have subtle difference. The word ikhtiyar, it means akhd khayru shay. You go and you take the good in something. So you have a basket of apples, let's say, all red apples. You go, you're not going to pick the wormy apple, the one that's soggy. You're not going to go pick the nice red apple, the one that looks nice to you. You would. That is ikhtiyar. You have taken the nice red apple, the one that's red, that has nice flavor, you picked it. Istifa, it is different. In the ulama, they explain to us, it is, in Arabic you say, أخذ صفوة الشيء وتمييزه عن غيره إذا اختلطا. You take that which is most elite. You take that which is most elite from amongst a group of things. But there is a clause that goes with it. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you have that basket of apples. You take the good apple. Let's say you put the good apple back in the basket, you mix it up. Will you immediately be able to tell the good apple? No, you cannot tell immediately. You'll have to look carefully to see where is it. That is ikhtiyar. Istifa is different. The level of chosen for istifa is different because the example you use is, let's say you have a basket of rocks, gray, dusty rocks, and in the middle of them is a diamond. You pick the diamond out, or you put the diamond back in, the diamond will always look different from the rocks. That is istifa. Istifa is being chosen such that when you put it back into the group, you will always know what is the diamond and what are the rocks. Salawat. That's why Imam al-Hujjah, Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu al-Sharif, he says, أَنَا بَقِيَّةٌ مِّنْ آدَمٍ. I am the generations coming after Adam. وَذَخِيرَةٌ مِّن نُوحٍ. I am the stored house, or what has been reserved from Nuh. وَمُصْطَفَى مِنْ إِبْرَاهِيمٍ. I am the chosen of Ibrahim. وَصَفْوَةٌ مِّن Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. I am the chosen Mustafa of Ibrahim's family. And I am the elite of Muhammad's family sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. That's why the difference between istifa and ikhtiyar. Allah has chosen these people. Now, it is not just the Imam al-Athar. It is not just Muhammad and Mustafa who is chosen, because the Holy Quran says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ إِصْطَفَى آدَمَ وَنُوحًا وَآلَ إِبْرَاهِيمَ وَآلَ عِمْرَانَ عَلَى الْعَالَمِينَ. Right? Allah says, I have chosen, istifa, special chosen, Adam wa Nuh, وآل إبراهيم وآل عمران على العالمين. The family of Ibrahim and the family of Imran over all of the universe, over all of other creation. I have chosen them. They have been chosen in this special manner. And if you look truly at the life of Ibrahim particularly, you see why that is. Now, you know the story of Ibrahim, how the trials he went to. Now you know that just like Isa alayhi salam, when he was born, what did he say? Inni Abdullah, I am the servant of God. And Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salatu was salam, he says about Ibrahim, that Ibrahim was chosen. But do you know something? He says, Inna Allah akhada Ibrahim nabiyya qabla an yakhudahu. Inna Allah akhada Ibrahim abdan qabla an yakhudahu nabiyya. Allah took Ibrahim to be a servant before he made him into a nabi. And even the Quran says, Innahu kana siddiqan nabiyya. And what is a nabi? Nabi is someone who the wahi comes and they hear it in their sleep or in their dream. They do not see in front of them or hear the angel. Then Imam Sadiq, he says, Inna Allah akhada Ibrahim nabiyyan qabla an yakhudahu rasulah. Allah took Ibrahim to be a nabi before he took him to be a rasul. So he was a nabi first, then he became a rasul. And even the Quran says that when the angels came to visit Ibrahim alayhi salam, they said, Salamu alaykum. He heard the voice of the angel and he said, Wa alaykum salam. Now he has reached the state of a rasul. But now his change does not stop. Because Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu was salam, he says, Inna Allah akhada Ibrahim rasulan qabla an yakhudahu khalila. Allah took Ibrahim to be a rasul before he took him or appointed him the station of Khalil. Now he is Khalil Allah. He has been made companion, isn't he? He has passed test upon test. He was thrown into the fire by Numrud. He had trials with his children, leaving them with Sayyidah Hajar in the desert and having to go back immediately towards Palestine or towards Iraq where Sayyidah Sarah was. All of these trials. So now he has gone from being a Abd to being a Nabi, to being a Rasul, to being the Khalil of Allah. But Imam doesn't stop. He says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ أَخَذَ إِبْرَاهِيمَ خَلِيلًا قَبْلَ أَنْ يَأْخُذَهُ إِمَامًا. Allah took Ibrahim to be Khalil before finally he made him into an Imam. That final station, the highest station, is the station of Imam. That is the station that was given to Ibrahim. Why? Because of the great test that Allah says, go sacrifice your son, Ismail, and he was ready. He says, yes, I am ready, Allah. And you know the ayah of the Holy Quran that says, وَإِذِ ابْتَلَىٰ إِبْرَاهِيمَ رَبُّهُ بِكَلِمَاتٍ فَأَتَمَّهُنَّ. Allah tested Ibrahim. Ibrahim passed the test. قَالَ إِنِّي جَاعِلُكَ لِلنَّاسِ what? Imama. I am going to make you an Imam. Ibrahim is told by Allah, I am making you an Imam. Now how old was he at this point, brothers and sisters? Ismail is a young man at this point. So Ibrahim must have been very, very old. Why at this stage, after being Rasul for all these years, Khalil for all these years, Allah now is going to say, oh Ibrahim, I'm going to make you Imam. There must be something about Imam. So now Imam al-Rida alayhi salatu was-salam, he explains, he says that when Ibrahim heard that Allah is going to make him an Imam, he became excited. And the ayah says, قَالَ وَمِنْ ذُرِّيَّتِي. He said, oh Allah, for my children also will you make Imam? And Allah says, قَالَ لَا يَنَالُ عَهْدِ الظَّالِمِينَ. Only those who are not zalim, they are Imam, or Ibrahim. Only those who are not zalim, they are going to be imam. So again, what is that position of imamat? Brothers and sisters, if you read, the position of imamat is the highest status that can be given. And there are some who say, well, the followers of the Ahlul Bayt, the Shia, they put the imams above Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. And the answer is no. Because our Rasul Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, he was Nabi, Rasul and Imam. And his rank is above everybody's rank. So much so that you want to understand, listen to the words of Ali ibn Abi Talib, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. He would say, Ana abdun min abid Muhammad. I am one of the servants of Muhammad. This is Imam Ali saying this, that I am one of the servants of Muhammad. So there is no saying that no Rasulullah had lower status. No, the position of imamat is the highest position. Now why? Because the position of imamat is very different from the position of Rasul. The position of imamat is such that our ulama explain through the traditions of the Ahlul Bayt that these are the people who can see into the hearts of people. They know the deeds of people. The relationship that an imam has with his follower is very intimate. And do you know why it is very intimate? And the Quran will tell you, it will give you the answer. It will say, the Quran says, وَجَعَلْنَا مِنْهُمْ أَئِمَّةً يَهْدُونَ بِأَمْرِنَا لَمَّا صَبَرُوا وَكَانُوا بِآيَاتِنَا يُوقِنُونَ. That we have made them into imams. And that's why in Arabic, when you say, imamat is ja'alun ilahi. It is a order of Allah that He is making someone imam. Nobody can just become imam like that. It is Allah who is making the imam. And that's why the ayah says, وَجَعَلْنَا مِنْهُمْ أَئِمَّةً يَهْدُونَ بِأَمْرِنَا لَمَّا صَبَرُوا وَكَانُوا بِآيَاتِنَا يُوقِنُونَ. We have made them into imams. And we have done it by our amr so they can guide people. The imamat is different from any other position because it is done through the amr, the command of Allah. And because it is done through the command of Allah, it is specifically chosen to guide the hearts of people. Now if I tell you this, don't believe me, I will tell you a story. The companion one day describes that I am traveling in the countryside with Abu al-Hasan Ali ibn Musa al-Rida alayhi as-salam. He says, we are leaning against the wall, resting in our travels. All of a sudden, a janaza is going by. Some dead body is being carried for burial. He says, the companion says, I see Abu al-Hasan, Imam al-Rida, when he sees the janaza, the funeral procession going, he races to it like a baby lamb goes to her mother. He races to it. And he grabs a hold of the kafan, and he helps carrying, he's doing the takbirat and all the du'as, and they bring the kafan and they bring it and they rest it right next to the grave before putting it in. The people, they recognize who Imam al-Rida is and they make space for him. And Imam al-Rida, he goes and he kneels down next to the body. And he says, Ya fulan ibn fulan, la khawf alayk ba'ad hadha al-yawm, wabshir bil-jannah. He says, oh so and so, Imam says to the dead body, don't be afraid of me. No fear on you after today. And get the good news from me that you are in Jannah. Your place is in Jannah. And the people come, they bury the body is dead. After everything is finished, Imam gets up, the companion who was traveling with him watching all of this, he says, Ya Rasulullah, grandson of the Prophet. It must be good fortune that you were here when your companion, someone you know is being buried, he has died, and you are here. You must have known him very well. He must have been a very pious man, very said those words of yours before him being buried. Imam al-Rida, he said, I have never met this man before. So the companion, he says, well then how so? How could you make that statement to him? That don't be afraid, you're going to Jannah. Imam al-Rida, he says, don't you know that we, the Imams, we receive word of the actions of all of our Shia. Day and night we receive word of all the actions of our Shia, such that if one of our Shia does a good deed, we thank Allah for our Shia, that they did a good deed. And if, na'udhu billah, wal-'ayadu billah, if one of our Shia commits a sin, we ask astaghfar for our Shia. This is why the position of imamat is not the same as the position of any other status. The imamat is different. And that's why Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam was the greatest, and he was an imam. Because is it not Rasul who connects to the heart, sees the deeds? It is that position of imamah that is very great, and that's why it is the position that will take you into the akhirah. That on the day of judgment, when you stand in front of Allah, how are you going to stand? You're going to stand and you will have to have somebody there with you to intercede on your behalf with imam. And the Quran says, يَوْمَ نَدْعُ كُلُّ أُنَاسٍ بِإِمَامِهِمْ. We will call on that day of judgment every group of people by their imam. It didn't say يَوْمَ نَدْعُ كُلُّ أُنَاسٍ بِرَسُولِهِمْ or نَبِيِّهِمْ. It says we will call each person by their imam. That's why the position of imamat is different. It takes you to your destination. It will carry you to your destination. That's why even the Quran talks about imams who will take you to the nar. They will take you to Jahannam. The imam will take you to your destination. He will carry you. Believe me, it is a connection so deep in your heart. That's why when you talk about an Imam al-Mahdi, ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu al-sharif, you are talking about somebody who is deeply connected to your heart. And the Allama Tabatabai, he explains that the Imam is one who on one side he is connected to the follower, and on the other side he is connected to the command of Allah, to Amr Allah. He sees both sides, he is connected to both sides. And believe me, it will carry you. So one more story, yes? One more story, yes. Stories are good. And the bait, they are our life. They say one day, Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam, he had Imam Sadiq, he had a servant. And the Imam would go on his horse or his donkey or whatever, he would ride to the market, and when he or into the mosque or whatever he was doing, and he would leave the animal there and go inside. The servant would watch the animal, hold on to the reins and make sure the animal does not escape. One day Imam is going into the town or to the market, he gets down, he leaves the reins in the hands of the servant and he goes about his business. While the servant is standing there holding the reins, a man from Khurasan comes. He stops and he says, my friend, can I talk to you for a minute? The servant says, sure. He says, I would like to make a proposal to you. I would like to propose something to you. The servant says, sure, tell me, what is your proposal? He's never seen this man, some stranger on the street. The man from Khurasan, he says, look, I know that you are in the service of Ja'far ibn Muhammad al-Sadiq, that you are in the service of the grandson of Rasulullah. My proposal to you is that if I pay you so many hundreds or thousands of dinar, will you leave his service and allow me to take your place as his servant? Would you allow me? I will pay you lots of money. Just take the money, let me take your place, I will become his servant. The servant hears this, he has lots of money, he thinks, yes, that's good. I will get lots of money. I will get freedom. I will have all of this. He says, I must ask my master, Ja'far ibn Muhammad. The Khurasan man says, okay, take your time, I will have some business, I will go and I will come back. He goes. Meanwhile, the servant is waiting, Imam comes, Imam stands in front of him. The servant says, Ya ibn Rasulullah, I have been in the service for a long time, dedicated to you, devoted, loyal to you. If I ask you something, will you give it to me? If I ask something for my own good, will you deny it of me? Imam says, no, of course I will not deny you something that is for your own good, something that will benefit you. Tell me, what is it? So the servant, he says, Ya ibn Rasulullah, such and such man from Khurasan came, he offered me this proposal to come and take this place. Imam says, absolutely. Take the money, let him take your place. But before you go, let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. He says, إِذَا كَانَتِ الْقِيَامَةِ تَعَلَّقَ رَسُولَ اللَّهِ بِنُورِ اللَّهِ. If the day of judgment comes, Rasulullah will hold on to the nur of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَتَعَلَّقَ عَلِي بِنُورِ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ. Ali ibn Abi Talib will hold on to the nur of Rasulullah. وَتَعَلَّقَ الْحَسَنِ بِنُورِ عَلِي. Al-Hasan will hold on to the nur of Ali. وَتَعَلَّقَ الْحُسَيْنِ بِنُورِ الْحَسَنِ. Imam Hussein will hold on to the nur, the light of Al-Hasan. وَتَعَلَّقَ نُورَ الْأَئِمَّةِ وَتَعَلَّقَ الْأَئِمَّةِ بِنُورِ الْحُسَيْنِ. All the Imams will hold the nur of Imam al-Hussein. وَتَعَلَّقَ شِيعَتُنَا بِنُورِنَا. On that day, our Shia will hold on to the nur of all of the Imams. فَدَخَلُوا مَدْخَلِنَا. They will enter wherever we enter into on that day of Qiyamah. He says, now make your decision. Go ahead and take the money and switch places. They say the Khurasani man who comes back, He says, when I left you, you had a different expression on your face. Now all of a sudden your expression has changed completely. Now all of a sudden your expression has changed. The servant, he says, I don't want your offer, I have to stay in the service. So Imam يوم ندعو كل أناس بإمامهم. Brothers and sisters, Imamate is about awareness. And in this time of ghaiba, in the disappearance or occultation of our Imam, the only way we can see Imam is with our hearts, isn't it? You cannot see him with your physical eye. You cannot see him or sense him with your ears or your nose or your touch. Our Iman is not deep enough that we are sensing him. And so the only way we can sense him is by awakening the eyes of our heart, the basira that is inside of us. And believe me, our vision is very, very poor, brothers and sisters. Our vision is very poor. And I'm not talking about this vision. I wear contact lenses, so I can tell you, it's not about this vision. It is a deeper vision. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he says, لَيْسَ الْأَعْمَى مَنْ يَعْمَى بَصَرُهُ. The blind is not the one whose physical eyes are blind. وَلَكِنَّ الْأَعْمَى مَنْ تَعْمَى بَصِيرَتُهُ. The true blind person is the one whose insight is gone. They cannot see with their heart. Their hearts are blind. It's not about the eyes. To sense Imam, you have to have basira. You have to have insight from inside. We don't have this. And this is a quality that is cultivated by the Imam in the followers. So why? Because how does a human being function? We see something, we observe something, we have vision of something, we acquire knowledge of that thing, and then we act accordingly, don't we? It's basic. I see something in front of me, you are talking to me, I see you, I hear your words, I process the information, the knowledge in my brain, and I respond, I act accordingly. Isn't it? It's very simple. And the Holy Quran even describes this. It describes this state in which you see things and you process the knowledge and you act. The ayah in the Holy Quran, it says, إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِلْمُتَوَسِّمِينَ. There are signs that Allah has created for a group of people known as al-mutawassimin. And this word mutawassimin is another, the Quran is filled with depth. But if you just study the depth of the Arabic, you will spend your life just trying to unravel how deep the Quran is. This word, when they explain it, it means those people who can look at something and immediately they know the truth about it. They look at it for 1 second, they know the truth. They see it, they discern the truth immediately. They don't need time to think or process. They're so sharp, they can draw conclusions so quickly. Have you not met people like this? Who see a situation and within 2 seconds they know what has happened. They know the truth of the situation. They know how to act accordingly in that situation. This is what it is. They say one day a man, what are we now, story number 8 maybe? Is anyone counting? So one day they say a man comes to the Imam, Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam, he's walking in the street. He says, Ya Rasulullah, I have a need, I would like to ask you. Imam says, don't say it to me. I will tell you what you need. Imam says, you need such and such and such and such. So the man, the companion, he says, Ya Rasulullah, how did you know that? He said, bit tawassum. The word al-mutawassimin, he said, bit tawassum. I can see. My vision is very deep. Imam can see. How many, we live in a world, brothers and sisters, where I look at my fellow brothers and sisters in the community, and I cannot sense the pain in someone's face. People walk into our center have pain in their hearts, do they not? They're suffering in their personal lives. Some depression, some loss, some difficulty. Yet we come here to the centers, and I will speak for myself, I will say salam, I will eat, and I will have no clue that this person is suffering inside. Because we have no vision. And again, it's not about this eye, it is the eye of the heart that is not awake. Because our vision has been made weak, and that has to be cultivated. That is done by the Imam. They say one day, Ma'mun al-Abbasi, la'natullah alayhi. Ma'mun, after he had called Imam al-Wada alayhi salatu wassalam up to Khurasan, he always used to challenge the Imam and ask a lot of questions. So particularly about the Imamate. So one day he is sitting with Imam al-Wada, al-Hasan, and he says, Ya al-Hasan, he says, how is Imamate established? How is the Imamate established? So the Imam, he says, by the nas. In Arabic we say nas. By the proof that is found in the text. So we have proof from Rasulullah that has given us the names of the Imams. We know where they come from. We have proof in the Quran that there are imams, etc., etc. There is even nas. Now, Ma'mun continues asking him, he says, Ya Abul Hassan, what is the proof that you are Imam Allah? He says two things. He says, my knowledge. The Imam has knowledge that nobody else has. And he says, two, whenever I make a dua, Allah always answers that dua. That's how. Ma'mun, he says, Ya Abul Hassan, how is it that you know all the affairs? All these affairs, everything that is there, how do you know them? Imam Allah, he says, this is a vow, this is a covenant that has been passed down from us generation to generation from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Salawat. Ma'mun keeps asking. He says, okay, Ya Abul Hassan, how is it you know the hearts of the people? I said to you, Imam is a position that it knows the hearts of the person. So Ma'mun says, how do you know the hearts of the believer? So Imam Allah, he says to Ma'mun al-Abbasi, he says, have you not heard about the discernment of a believer, the firasa of a believer? He says, فَإِنَّهُ يَنْظُرُ بِنُورِ اللَّهِ. When a believer looks at something, he is looking through the light of Allah. When he looks, and when I say not looking with this eye again, his deep vision from inside, when he looks at something, he is looking by the nur of Allah. Imam says to him, مَا مِن مُؤْمِنٍ إِلَّا وَلَهُ فِرَاسًا يَنْظُرُ بِنُورِ اللَّهِ عَلَى قَدَرِ إِيمَانِهِ وَمَبْلَغِ إِسْتِقْصَائِهِ وَعِلْمِهِ. Every mu'min, every believer, you have to be a believer, sees and has discernment that comes from the nur of Allah. And it is only on the level of their iman. And it is only on the degree of their vision, their inner vision and their knowledge. I said to you, you have to have vision, knowledge and action. You must be able to. Imam says, the more iman you have, the more vision you will have. The more deep your vision will become. The more knowledge you have, the more deeper your vision will become. And then Imam says, فَأَوَّلَ الْمُتَوَسِّمِينَ مُحَمَّدٍ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَآلِهِ وَسَلَّمَ. The first of the mutawassimin, the deep people with deep vision, that is Rasulullah. ثُمَّ أَمِيرَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ عَلِيِّ بْنَ أَبِي طَالِبٍ ثُمَّ الْحَسَنِ بْنَ عَلِيٍّ ثُمَّ الْحُسَيْنِ بْنَ عَلِيٍّ ثُمَّ عَلِيِّ بْنَ الْحُسَيْنِ. And he lists the Imams. That these are the people who have deep vision. Brothers and sisters, we are struggling. Why? Because we are inundated with information. Inundated, and this time particularly. The level of noise in the environment, in the world we live in is so much. And I'm not talking about like construction noise or cars or Grand Prix. I think there's Grand Prix this weekend, right? That's not the noise I'm talking about. I'll give you an example. I'm a true novice when it comes to computers. So when I'm working at my computer, I will open up Microsoft Word, I will start working. Then I need to do some Excel work, so I open Excel at the same time. Then I open PowerPoint. I have my browser running in the background. I pull up some other statistical software, something else is opened up. I've opened up, meanwhile, 18 windows all at once. 10 different processes are running in the background, Word and Excel and PowerPoint and all of that. Keeps going on. You're running all. Meanwhile, I don't close any of them. I don't end any of them, exit out of any. What is going to happen to my computer? It will freeze, will it not? Or it will at least slow down. It will at least slow down. Or you will get blue screen of death. Alhamdulillah, I never had blue screen of death. Your computer will freeze. Now think about us. Inundated by internet. How many television channels are there these days? 1,000? iPhones, Samsungs, and I'm not criticizing them. They're tools, they should be used. But imagine how much information you are coming into. One of the young people in our community, he was telling me, he says, Dr. Hazari, I sit on the bus going to the college, and he said, literally every day, there's a boy who sits there, and it's like a twitch. He's got a habit that he will click his iPhone, put that code in, flip through the screens, shut it off. And then 10 seconds later, flip through the screens, again, shut it off. 10 seconds later, just flip through the screens. Think about the noise he has created in his head, just from this act. Because we are ultra connected to everything. Imagine what that does to our Rasul. Rasulullah, when he wanted to worship, where did he go? Ghar Hira, didn't he? He went to a cave to sit by himself in the darkness of the night. He was not amongst lots of people. He worshipped in silence. We have created so much noise. In the same way, the food we eat, everything we do has an effect on the basira that is inside us. And believe me, if we want to realize that Imam that is here with us, close to us, always with us, our basira must be greater. Our awareness must be greater. Our awareness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our awareness of ourselves, and how we must act towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and our awareness of the world that we have. That is the only way to fully realize what that Imam actually means to us and where we must go. And believe me, we say, don't we, that the world is full with injustice and inequity. And that when Imam Sahib al-Asr al-Zaman, Ajallallahu ta'ala farajahu al-Sharif, that he will say, يَمْلَأِ الْأَرْض قِسْطًا وَعَدْلًا بَعْدَمَا مُلِئَتْ ظُلْمًا وَجَوْرًا. He will fill up the earth with justice and equity, just like it had been filled up with injustice and inequity or oppression. Is the world not filled with oppression and injustice? Or are we too blind to see? Is someone being treated unjustly in front of our faces, someone in our community, someone we know, and we don't even see it? Are we maybe treating someone unjustly, and we don't even see that we are doing it? This is the blindness that can catch us and trap us very quickly. And the Imam is the one who opens those eyes. Brothers and sisters, I'll give you an example. The world that we live in. We, in the West, are in a world of consumption, is it not? And I come from America, so it is the same. And I'm a born Canadian, so I would say I'm Canadian first, but I live in America. It is a world of consumption, isn't it? We take and take. Have you ever questioned where all of this comes from? Or the wastage it generates? I'll tell you a story that I read, and I tell this story quite often because it scares me. There was a story done by a reporter from the Toronto Sun. You can go look it up. In which she, and I'm sure some of you may have heard this story and read her report on this. She was in Delhi, I believe, one of the major Indian cities. And she wanted to go to Bangladesh and look at one of these factories that generate the shirts, t-shirts and shirts and things. Now, when she inquired about it, she noticed that there were people who were not allowing her to do so. There was some inhibition, people were not giving her information, they were not helping her, they didn't trust her, but why did she want to go? So she said, I had to create a fake story. I started asking around and making a fake story saying that I started lying and saying that I have an abusive husband, I'm running away, I'm trying to run away to Bangladesh. Can someone help me move to Bangladesh and to get a job somewhere? Eventually, she made the story short. She gets into a factory where she is working. Now she comes into this factory. Initially, she said the manager was very skeptical. He didn't trust me. So I had to sort of build his trust. And meanwhile, she's a reporter. She's trying to do investigation on what happens in these factories. She says, I go to this factory and I start working. She says, let me describe for you the room. She said, the room is like maybe the size of this room. Like a classroom, basically. Size of a classroom. The sewing machines are organized on the walls, all along the walls. There are women at every sewing machine working away on the sewing machine, making these shirts. In the middle of the room, there are women and young girls stitching with their hands the shirts. She says, I come in, the manager or the supervisor of the factory, he put me under the supervision of a 9-year-old girl named me. My supervisor was a 9-year-old girl named me. I ask you this because what are our 9-year-old girls in the room? They are certainly not in factories. This 9-year-old girl, she says she was my supervisor, she was my boss, so I would go to her for guidance and ask her what to do. She was very good. She said, one day I asked this 9-year-old me that, what are your aspirations in life? You are serving. She said, this girl, 9-year-old girl, she said to me that I would like one day to move from the floor to the sewing machine. The reporter asked, she said, you have nothing beyond that? She said, no, that would be the best thing, that if I could move from the floor to the sewing machine. Think about this. She says, I continued to work. She says, it was very difficult for me. She says, 16, 17 hours a day in this room. These people were working. She says, every time I stitched a shirt, I was sitting on the ground, I stitched a shirt, I would take it and I would put it in a pile that was meant for the shirts that were finished, completed. She says, I was going and doing that, My boss, me, this 9-year-old, my supervisor, she came to me and she said, look, don't put this shirt here in this pile. In the pile with the finished shirts, put them here on the side. So I listened to her. She's my boss, my supervisor. I started whatever work I finished, I put them on the side. I just put them on the side. I didn't put it in that pile. Finally, I kept doing that. I noticed everyone's putting it in the done pile, the pile where all the shirts are finished and done for shipping. I went to my supervisor, me, this 9-year-old, and I asked her, I said, well, why do you not want me to put the shirt with the done shirts, the ones that are finished, completed? She said, I noticed that I had made small mistakes, and that this poor girl, me, was going back and fixing up those mistakes, so I don't get in trouble. She was worried about me losing my job and not getting paid, so she was going back and fixing all of my sort of loose and not good work, and then she was putting it in the dump. Imagine where those shirts are ending up. Those shirts are the shirts sold here in North America. It is not just in Chittagong, in Bangladesh. It is not just in the places of the third world. In Mexico. In Mexico, all the electronics come from. You read some of the stories about the poor people who are working in those electronics factories, liver failure, lung failure, God knows what diseases they develop, chronic illnesses they develop. And we have no vision to see this. And if we want to see Imam, we have to see the world through this. And that's why we say, سَيَمْلَأَ الْأَرْضَ قِسْطًا وَعَدْلًا بَعْدَ مَا مُلِئَتْ ظُلْمًا وَجَوْرًا. He will fill the earth with justice and equity, just as it had been filled with oppression or injustice and inequity. And these two words, it's amazing, again to the Arabic, that the word qist and adl, they both in English mean justice or equity, but really they don't mean the same thing. And the ulama, they explain to us that when someone says dhulm, Imam Ali actually explained this. He said, وَضْعُ شَيْءٍ فِي غَيْرِ مَكَانِ. Putting anything in a place it does not belong is dhulm. Imam Ali says this. Putting anything where it does not belong is dhulm. If you take the rights of one person and give it to somebody else, that is dhulm. If you take some property from one person that it belongs to and give it to somebody it does not belong to, that is dhulm. This, on the other hand, means if you have two people in front of you, one who is white, one is black, one is Chinese, one is Pakistani, one is American, one is Russian, you differentiate between these two. That is jawr. The opposite of that is qist, to treat people equally, not to differentiate between people. If that is the case, then we are going to have a very difficult time seeing Imam al-Hujjah because we are constantly taking the rights of other people. We are constantly differentiating people based on the color of their skin, their culture, their background, their language. We constantly are doing it. If we want to recognize Imam, we have to recognize these are the things. Our vision has to open. And I've been quite dire in the last 15-20 minutes, and this is truly a celebration. So I promise I will make it a celebration, inshallah. That being said, the very presence of our Imam is the greatest hope. Hope and believe that he will set it right by the idhn of Allah, by the amr of Allah. Why? Because Imam al-Baqir alayhi salatu wassalam, he says, إِذَا قَامَ قَائِمُنَا وَضَعَ يَدَهُ عَلَى رُؤُوسِ الْعِبَادِ فَجَمَعَ بِهِ رَقُولَهُمْ وَأَكْمَلَ بِهِ أَخْلَاقَهُمْ. If Imam al-Hujjah comes, Imam Baqir is telling about his great-great-grandson, that if he comes, if he arises, he will put his hand on the heads of all of the servants, all the ibad. He will put his hand on the heads of all the ibad, and he will connect their minds together. And he will take their akhlaq, their characteristics, their ethics, and he will perfect them. So we have to believe that the hope of the Imam is there with us. That Imam is the great hope. And as long as we feel that hope of the Imam being there close to us and feel his presence, believe me, he will follow through for us. It is the promise of Allah. Because Allah says, I will never leave you without your Imam. Your Imam is your heart. Your Imam is connected to you. He is part of you. Let me tell a final story and we will be done, inshallah. They say, Sayyid Muhammad al-Qazwini, and we're not talking about modern day, the city, the family of al-Qazwini. We're talking about hundreds of years ago. And this story has been related by Sayyid Abbas Qumri. He says, Sayyid al-Qazwini describes that one day I was going from Hilla and I was traveling in a boat from Haidery. I had moved, Salaam Alaikum Sayyidina. And I was traveling in the boat, and as I was traveling in the boat, I noticed that there were many people on this boat traveling down this river, and on this boat I noticed that there was a family traveling together. Now the family, most of them, they were joking around with each other, laughing and having fun with each other. One member of that family was sitting separately by himself. He was part of the family, he was a relative of the others, but he was not with them, he was not playing around with them, joking. And in fact, it looked like they were ridiculing him, or laughing at him in some way. I noticed this and I was astounded. He said the travel went, we stopped, eventually the boat stopped, we got off. Sayyid Qazwini describes, he says, as I was walking, I just so happened to see the young man who was walking near me. He was sitting by himself, not with his relative. So I went to him and I asked him, I said, my friend, I noticed that you clearly are related to these other people. However, you were separate from them, you were isolated from them. Why did you not partake in the merriment and joking, and why were they treating you differently? He says, yes, they are my relatives. However, we are not of the same method. We are not of the same method. He says, but it was not always like this. I was like them. I was following the things that they followed, but something changed me. And now I am of a different method. He says, my mother is of the madhab that I follow now. Before I was a follower of my father's madhab. Now I follow my mother's madhab. So Sayyid Qazwini, he says, well, tell me, what is the story? How did this change come about that you changed your madhab? You changed your way of thinking. And I'm using the word madhab because that is what Sayyid Abbas Qumi says. That this is the way of his thinking. He says, I am a trader of oil. Barrels of oil, in this case, the fat and the burnt off fat. And I would go with a caravan to sell my oil every few months. He says, one trip when I went out with the caravan, we made our destination, I sold the barrels of oil, and we were on our way back. We stopped in a place, the caravan stopped. And as we stopped in this place, I stopped to pray or do something. I got engrossed, and before I knew it, the caravan had left. The caravan had left, and I am all by myself. And not only am I all by myself, but I am sitting in the wilderness all without any civilization near me. He says, all of a sudden I start to feel afraid. I start to get negative thoughts in my mind that maybe the wild animal would come in and attack me. I would perish due to thirst. Something would happen to me, and I became very afraid. The nighttime was coming. I was becoming afraid. I started to look over one rock to see if I can find the caravan. I searched in this direction, that direction, looking to find the caravan, nothing. And as the moments went on, I began to panic even more. Brothers and sisters, this can happen to anyone. It does not have to be in a desert. He says, I began to panic. He says, I fell down on the ground, and I started to ask Allah through every saint I can think of. Every saint I knew since my childhood, I kept thinking about this name and that name and asking Allah, please help me. Nothing happened. Finally, he says, I remembered something. In the last moment of my despair, that my mother used to tell me that if you ever have a difficulty, ever have a problem, call on the name Aba Saleh. Take the name of Ya Aba Saleh and say, Ya Aba Saleh, adrikni. Call on the name of Aba Saleh. I remembered this from my mother, and I began to call, Ya Aba Saleh, adrikni. Ya Aba Saleh, adrikni. I was on the ground. Now all of a sudden, he says, before I know it, someone is standing in the road. He says the nur is coming out of him. And I knew immediately that this is Aba Saleh. This is Aba Saleh. I got up and I grasped his hand. I said, I called you and you are here. Please help me, I am lost. Please help me, I am lost. He says, take my hand. I will take you. Take my hand and follow me. He says, I took the hand of Aba Saleh, and Aba Saleh alayhi salatu wassalam, ajjallahu ta'ala farajahu sharif. He took me between some rocks through the valley, and we stopped, and he said, your caravan is waiting right there. Where will you find it? So he says, I asked. Imam Sahib Asr al-Salam, I asked him that will you not come with me? Will you not join me on my trip? The caravan is right here. He answered me and he said, no, I have many more people to help on this land. I have many more people to help on this land. Go and make your way. He says, after this I joined the caravan, I returned back to my own village. As I came to my village, the days went by and I found the yearning that I want to see her. I want to see him again. So Sayyid Qazwini, he says there is a tradition that go for the ziyarah of Imam Abi Abdullah al-Hussein for 40 days. Go repeatedly to the ziyarah of Imam al-Hussein, and he will come and visit you, Imam Sahib al-Asr. So hearing this, I felt a great encouragement. I started going for the ziyarah of Imam al-Hussein. I went every day, the second day, the third day. The 39th day finished. On the 40th time to go for the ziyarah of Imam Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam, he says, I was faced with a road. The Abbasi Khalif had arranged his soldiers so that nobody could get to the Dariha of Imam al-Hussein. The soldiers of the Khilafah of the enemies had blockaded the road to get to the grave of Imam al-Hussein, so nobody was allowed to go. He says, all of a sudden, I began to panic because I thought, I have done 39, this is my 40th, I am going to get to there, the Imam is going to come and visit me again. I began to panic, I began to cry. All of a sudden, someone grabbed my hand. It is in the book. Look in the book, somebody grabbed my hand and he pulled me through, and I slid through the crowds of people, and before I knew it, I am standing at the grave of Imam Abi Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salatu wassalam. He says, I started to pray and kiss the grave. I had not even realized that someone grabbed my hand. All I knew is I saw the grave in front of me, I held onto the darih, and I began to cry and wail and read the ziyarah of Imam Abi Abdullah al-Hussein. And then it dawned on me that truly on the 40th time he was there and he visited me. But I was not aware enough to see him or notice that he held me. That Imam is holding your hand. That Imam is there holding you. And that's why Imam al-Baqir alayhi salatu wassalam, he says, إِذَا قَامَ قَائِمُنَا وَضَعَ يَدَهُ عَلَى رُؤُوسِ الْعِبَادِ وَجَمَعَ بِهِ عُقُولَهُمْ وَأَكْمَلَ بِهِ أَخْلَاقَهُمْ. If he comes, he puts his hands on the heads of the people, and he is going to connect their minds, and he is going to make their minds flourish, and he is going to make their ethics perfect, their character perfect. That is the position of the Imam, brothers and sisters. And that is the position that we are seeking. That is the awareness that we are seeking. To begin with the awareness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To take that awareness of Allah and turn it into the awareness of the self. To know what it is to need to be Abdullah. Like the words of Isa alayhi salam, Inni Abdullah, Atani al-Kitab wa ja'alani nabiyya. I am the servant of God. And then to turn it into how we can be aware of the word of us. And that is the power of the Imamate with us. That will carry us inshaAllah to the end. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آله في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم إنا نسألك وندعوك ونقسم عليك بحق الزهراء وأبيها وبعلها وبنيها والسر المستودع فيها لعن الله ظالميها. اللهم شافي كل مريض، اللهم رد كل غريب، اللهم فك كل أسير، اللهم غير سوء حالنا بحسن حالك يا كريم. اللهم وفقنا لمراضيك وجنبنا معاصيك وثبت أقدامنا على صراطك المستقيم وخذ بأيدينا إليك يا أرحم الراحمين. وفرج عنا يا الله فرجا عاجلا قريبا كلمح البصر وأقرب من ذلك. وافرغ علينا صبرا وتوفنا مسلمين. والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. صلى الله عليه وسلم. I think that how many stories did we tally up tonight? It's a lot, I think. That's my new record, I think, tonight. 10 stories.